Star Meher Baba Ki Jai. Welcome to everybody. And we'll now start with How to Love God. Sanjay, you want to read? You're on mute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jai Baba.
Can
Jai
you see
Baba.
it? I'll just read.
How? Yeah, I'm reading from my diary, so it's okay.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, others can maybe
Yeah, sure.
comment. Yeah, Jai Baba. How to love God? To love God in the most practical way is to love our fellow beings. If we feel for others in the same way as we feel for our own dear ones, we love God. Instead of seeing faults in others, we look within ourselves. We are loving God. If instead of robbing others to help ourselves, we rob ourselves to help others, we are loving God. If we suffer in the suffering of others and feel happy in the happiness of others, we are loving God. If instead of worrying over own misfortunes, we think ourselves most fortunate than many, many others, we are loving God. If we endure our lot with patience and contentment, accepting it as His will, we are loving God. If we understand and feel that the greatest act of devotion and worship to God is not to hurt or harm any of His beings, we are loving God. To love God as He ought to be loved, we must live for God and die for God, knowing that the goal of life is to love God and find Him as our own self. Jai Meher Baba.
Jai Baba. Jai Baba. Thank
Jai
you.
Baba.
So, those of you on the physical book, we finished with part 5. So, we go to part 6, which is specialized meditations that are impersonal. So, I have a question before we start. How many of you read the exposition again? It's okay if you didn't, but yeah, it's okay if you didn't. Neither did I, but I think as frequently as we can go back to that, it's a quick and easy read, but very powerful and profound, and kind of reinstates all the intent of all the learnings that Baba wants us to get. So in that sense, it's the right thing to do as often as possible. So with that, I go to page 234 on the physical book, Types of Meditation, part 6. Yeah. Part 5, the distinction between personal and impersonal meditation. Part 5 was devoted to explanatory comments. Mama has to go on mute. I muted him. Part 5 was devoted to explanatory comments on those specialized meditations that are personal. This part will be devoted to those specialized meditations that are impersonal. It might be recalled that meditation is personal when it is concerned with a person and impersonal when it is concerned with aspects of personality or something that falls outside the range of human personality as it is commonly understood. In the table of enumerative classification given in part 5, the first 4 forms of meditation are personal and remaining 8 forms are impersonal. Like the forms of personal meditation, the forms of impersonal meditation also individually deserve separate explanatory comments. Meditation on all forms of life. Man's attention has a tendency to be riveted on his own body or on other forms independent of the spirit they manifest. This leads to illusions, entanglements, and other complications. Hence, arises the need for a type of meditation that will enable the aspirant to develop a proper perspective concerning the real status and meaning of the numerous forms and to cultivate a right attitude toward them. In this type of meditation, the aspirant acquires the constant habit of regarding all forms as equally the manifestations of the same one, all pervading life and as nothing in themselves separately. This type of meditation aids disentanglement from the world of creation and furthers cultivation of the highest type of universal love, which regards the whole of humanity and living creatures as members of an indivisible whole. Meditation regarding one's body. But the type of meditation concerned with the numerous forms of manifested life remains incomplete unless it is supplemented by another type of meditation that is concerned with one's own body. One's own body, gross, subtle, or mental, is like the bodies of others, a form of the one all-pervading life. Nonetheless, consciousness is fixed on one's bodies by an attachment so deep that it identifies itself with them. Continued thoughts of detachment concerning one's own body help emancipation of consciousness and the dawn of true self-knowledge. Meditation of this type is very fruitful for the aspirant. The gross, subtle, and mental bodies are all then regarded as cloaks that one can put on or off. Meditation on formless and infinite aspect of God. The type of meditation concerned with the numerous forms of manifested life and the type of meditation concerned with one's own bodies are both preparation for the form of impersonal meditation in which an effort is made to withdraw consciousness from all the numerous forms of manifested life, including one's own bodies, and consciousness is centered on the formless and infinite aspect of God. In the initial phases, this form of impersonal meditation has to avail itself of some symbols of infinity. It is actually more helpful to start with some image that suggests and signifies infinity than the abstract idea of infinity. The mind may be made steady on an image of sky, ocean, or vast emptiness, but once a particular image is chosen, the aspirant should stick to it throughout the period of meditation and not allow it to be replaced by another image. From these symbols of infinity, complete and unlimited emptiness is difficult to imagine. However, the best symbol is that which one can most successfully bring before one's mind. Even when unlimited emptiness is used to signify infinity, in this form of meditation, the aspirant is not supposed to arrive at complete blankness of mind. Such blankness involves the cessation of all mental activity and having absolutely no thoughts or ideas. But in this form of meditation, the mind tries to understand and realize the formless and infinite aspect of God by means of a significant symbol. Picturing infinity as being within. There is an important variation of this impersonal form of meditation. In it, the infinity one imagines is not mentally externalized as if it were an unlimited stretch of something outside the aspirant. It is more helpful to picture infinity as within the aspirant. After picturing infinity within, the aspirant should give himself the strong suggestion of his identity with infinity by mentally repeating, "I am as infinite as the sky within," or "I am as infinite as the ocean within," or "I am as infinite as the emptiness within." It may be even more helpful to use the bare formula, "I am the infinite within." And while mentally repeating this formula to grasp and realize the significance of infinity through the image that has been chosen, it is not necessary to repeat the formula in so many words. It is enough to cling to the thought expressed in the formula. The "I am infinite" meditation may lead to a merging of the aspirant into the formless and infinite aspect of God. Some aspirants merge so completely that even if swarms of mosquitoes surround them, they do not hear them. Other aspirants might become restless or easily disturbed. They should not keep worrying about lack of success in meditation, but should tenaciously persist whether they experience merging or not. A relaxed position is helpful for merging. The final merging, however, is impossible except through the help of a perfect master. quest for agent of action. The forms of meditation thus far explained are predominantly concerned with the impersonal objects of experience, but some impersonal forms of meditation are concerned with the subject of experience. One such important form of meditation consists in ceaselessly pressing the query, who is it that does all these things? The aspirant finds himself thinking, I sleep, walk, eat, and talk. I see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. I think, feel, and desire, and so forth. The searching question this form of meditation is concerned with is, who is this I? The soul does not experience any of these things. The soul does not sleep, walk, eat, or talk, see, hear, touch, taste, or smell, think, feel, or desire. Who then is the agent? The source of all these activities has to be discovered, and the mystery of all life has to be explained. There is a power that does all these things, and one must know oneself to be different from the power and be able to use it with detachment. The aspirant thinks that he walks. It is really his body that walks. The aspirant thinks that he sees, hears, thinks, feels, or desires. It is really his mind that does all these things through some convenient medium. As soul, the aspirant is everywhere and really does nothing. But it is not enough to think that as soul, he is everywhere and really does nothing. He must know this. Kama, did you unmute to say something? Okay, I'll continue. Considering oneself a witness. Knowledge of the soul may also be approached through a form of meditation in which the aspirant tries to realize himself as merely a witness of all physical and mental happenings. After a person wakes up from a dream, he realizes that he was not a real agent of the actions in the dream, but that he was merely a witness of them. If the aspirant persistently practices considering himself a witness of all physical and mental happenings that he experiences in wakefulness as well as in dreams, he soon develops utter detachment, which brings freedom from all worries and sufferings connected with worldly events. This form of meditation is intended to lift the aspirant out of the bonds of time and to secure for him immediate relief from the fret and fever connected with the diverse expressions of limited energy. As a witness, the soul remains aloof from all events in time, and the results of action do not bind it. All this has to be experienced and not merely thought about. Importance of stilling the mind. The forms of meditation concerned with the subject of experience, however, suffer from the handicap that the true subject of experience can never be the object of thought or meditation in the ordinary sense. Thus, these forms of meditation can at best take the aspirant very close to self-knowledge, which can only dawn in its full glory when the domain of the mind is completely traversed. Some impersonal forms of specialized meditation are therefore concerned with mental operations, and they ultimately aim at stilling the mind. To acquire control over thoughts is to become fully conscious of what they are. They have to be attended to before they are controlled. Writing down thoughts is the section. In ordinary introspection, it is seldom possible for the beginner to devote adequate attention to all the shadowy thoughts that pass through the mind. It is helpful, therefore, for the aspirant occasionally to write down all his thoughts as they come and then to inspect them carefully at leisure. This process is different from writing planned essays. Thoughts are allowed to arise without any direction or restraint, so that even repressed elements from the subconscious mind have access to the conscious mind. Observation of mental operations. In a more advanced stage, an intensive awareness of the mental processes can take place while thoughts appear in the consciousness, and writing them down becomes unnecessary. Observations of mental operations should be accompanied by critical evaluation of one's thoughts. Thoughts cannot be controlled except through an appreciation of their value or lack of value. When the diverse thoughts that assail the mind are critically evaluated and the internal stirrings of samskaras are faced, understood, and taken for what they are worth, the mind is freed from all obsessions and compulsions in relation to them. Making mind blank. A way is thus prepared for meditation that attempts to make the mind blank, which is one of the most difficult things to achieve. The mind is without any ideas during sleep, but consciousness is then in abeyance. If during wakefulness the mind has the idea of becoming blank, it is thinking about that idea and is far from being blank. However, this difficult trick of making the mind blank becomes possible by an alternation between two incompatible forms of meditation, so that the mind is caught between concentration and distraction. Alternating between concentration and distraction. Thus, the aspirant can concentrate on the master for 5 minutes, and then as the mind is getting settled on the form of the master, he can steady his mind for the next 5 minutes in the impersonal meditation in which the thought is, I am infinite. The disparity between the two forms of meditation can be emphasized by keeping the eyes open during meditation on the form of the master and closing the eyes during impersonal meditation. Such alternation helps in making the mind blank. But to be successful, both forms of meditation have to be seriously pursued. Though after 5 minutes there is to be a changeover to another type of meditation, there should be no thought of it while the first type is going on. There is no distraction unless there is concentration. And when a changeover is effected, there should be no thought of the first type of meditation. The distraction has to be as complete as the previous concentration. When there is a quick alternation between concentration and distraction, mental operations are, as it were, cut through by a saw that goes backward and forward. Truth reflected in the tranquil mind. The disappearance of mental operations of all types contributes towards making the mind absolutely still without allowing consciousness to fall into abeyance. All thoughts that appear in the mind of the aspirant are forms of perturbation and have their origin in the momentum of stored samskaras. The agitation of the mind can disappear only when the aspirant can so control his mind that all thoughts can be ruled out at will. Only in complete internal silence is truth found. When the surface of the lake is still, it reflects the stars. When the mind is tranquil, it reflects the nature of the soul as it is. With that, we come to the end of part 6. And I think this just talks about the impersonal meditation. I did not understand this part, alternating between concentration and distraction, very well. So if anybody can help, apart from any other questions and discussion points. So I didn't understand the use of the word distraction specifically, because I understand the word concentration and then the switching from one type of meditation to the other. That's the alternation. But what is the distraction here? I really didn't get. Right. So there is alternation that I can get. Right. So that's one point.
Jai Baba, this is Kama.
Yeah.
What I've understood is that it's almost like a paradox. So you're switching, it's like a paradox.
Mm-hmm.
Distraction and concentration. So when you look at this whole process, which he says alternating between concentration and distraction.
Mm-hmm.
So he says for 5 minutes, focus on the personal form of God,
Correct.
which is your avatar or perfect master.
Perfect.
Then immediately you have to switch to 5 minutes of concentrating on the impersonal form of God, which I define as OILS, our innermost loving self, or whatever you feel like. So the interesting thing is, between switching from the personal form to the impersonal form, there is a process which is maybe the word distraction is not the right word. You're just getting this. It should be more like you're switching. So even that distraction should be such that it has to be done with 100% concentration. Very one-pointed focus. So it is an ambiguous word that's being used. So I think you have to read between the lines and not take that word distraction in a literal sense.
Okay, so I think that makes sense. So you're just saying that the alternation is important, and the fact that the alternation has to be definitive and immediate without going back or going forward to the previous or the past state is the key message in that para. I agree with you, and maybe we'll leave distraction to editorial freedom.
So because it says the distraction has to be as complete as the previous concentration. So
that's what it
maybe
says,
it should say the concentration has to be as complete as the previous concentration, instead of saying the distraction.
True.
We don't know. I'm just guessing. So what we are saying is
no. See. You cannot take distraction. Usually, we misuse the word distraction. When you're concentrating on something, your mind goes haywire. Then we call that distraction. That is true, but it is like a traction. Okay, the train is going on a track that is going in one way. Distraction means changing from that flow of thought to a different flow of thought. At one point, you're concentrating on a master or avatar or perfect master, and that is attraction. That distraction means you are changing. That is what it means. It's not we are going out of haywire. It is we are changing from one traction to other traction. That is where they use the word distraction. I'm sure this was talked to Baba when editorials made these changes, and Baba approved it. If it is a wrong word, if it's a misused word, they would not have used it. I think that is how we have to understand traction and going out of traction. That is distraction.
Jai Baba.
Yeah, looks more plausible. Yeah.
Jai Baba, through experience, I do practice this kind of meditation, but it's nothing. As you do it often, it's not a distraction. It's with with utter ease. You switch from maybe looking at Baba's eyes and then closing your eyes and looking inwards and feeling that space. So distraction, maybe you're changing the track, but it's with ease, with time. It's effortless.
No. So I agree with all of you. So we will not fight the semantics here.
You cannot agree with all of us. You have to agree.
No. In the sense, we are not fighting the semantics here. The import is more important, and the import is well summarized by Kama and now by Nomita, right? So the fact that you're able to make these switches, and either traction to new traction, if you want to use that word, but basically it ensures that you go in and go back and forth comfortably.
Yeah.
I think that's the takeaway. I think let's not lose sight of what is the intent there. That's all.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Thank you. And any other points of discussion? I think this is a good time to probably go back to the table just to see what more we understand from it. Right. So are you able to see the table now? Yeah. So you have 12, and we have read all the different types. And I think what didn't make too much, we didn't have the clarity when we saw the table. It's clear now on the types in the fourth column. Now let's go through the classifications. The last column is very clear: forms of personal and impersonal. And this is basically meditation concerned with the objects of experiences, object of experience, which is basically either the master, concentration of the form, the qualities, the meditation of the heart, meditation of action, and meditation regarding the numerous forms of manifested life other than yourself, meditation regarding one's own body, and then meditation on the formless and infinite aspect of God. So this is the first one, objects. Subject is basically just two things, the observer and observer witness, and looking for the answer to the question, who is I? And the last one is, I think, an interesting grouping, or an important grouping. It's the one that is to tame the mind, right? So you start with a technique for seeing how this thought flow happens, which is the writing down of thoughts, and then the second one is watching these operations, and then the last one is the third and last one is making the mind blank. So I think now I feel a lot more comfortable about this table, right? So any other points of discussion on impersonal, or we'll go to chapter 7. Good. We are all meditation experts. So let's go to 7.
No, Karthik, I have one question. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So there's this part which says, I am infinite.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Before quest for agent of action.
Yeah.
So generally what we understand is I am refers to the I am infinite meditation may lead to merging of the aspirant into the formless and infinite aspect of God. So in general connotation, they say, when you say I am, that means I am infinite means God is infinite. Is that what is to be understood from this? Because ultimately God is actually infinite, but so does it portray that? I mean, this is a little something to be understood.
Yeah, I think.
And also, second question is on considering oneself as a witness.
Mm-hmm.
Ashokji, what it means, I think, when I am say I am infinite, I am imagining myself to be one with him. So on that I am focusing. So that's I think my understanding. So I have to assume, it's like a role play, think that you are yourself him, and then focus on it. That's what.
Absolutely. And one has to go within. I think there's a lot of emphasis of going within, not just the external, external form or external thoughts, but going within is the most important part, I think, in the impersonal. And I have one more question, because this is a very intriguing part. Is considering oneself as a witness. It says, if you come to that paragraph, Karthik,
Sure.
considering oneself as a witness.
Yeah.
So in this, the last part, I think that's very important. The last two sentences. As a witness, the soul remains aloof from all events in time, and the results of action is not binded. All this has to be experienced and not really thought about. Can somebody who has done it, or can you just elaborate this part? I think this is a very important part.
Jai Baba, Karthik.
Yeah, Ranga.
Can I say something? Couple of points. One is, I'd like to respond to first, where you must have heard, we all must have heard.
I think
like
I see a lot of
Soham or
yeah. Thank you. Go ahead, Ranga.
Yeah, I think we might have all heard of terms like Soham or Aham Brahmasmi or Tattvamasi. So one of the simplest ways to do that form of meditation is pick up one of these words and meditate on that. Okay, so that seems to work. So that's something I just want to share, because it's basically you're reaffirming that we are one with the Lord. The second part, on the witness part, I can explain from neuroscience perspective. So in my thinking, it's more like detachment. So for instance, let's say we've been through something tough during the day, if you see that the same thing keeps playing again and again in our minds. So one of the forms of meditation is to step out of that and then observe. And that is what, if you see Buddhism or all of this, they talk about things like that. So it is basically how to practice detachment within the meditation space. Jai Baba.
Sounds
very
good.
Very
something
good
like,
Thank you.
if I just want to add something like, the thoughts, let it be like clouds which are passing by, and let them pass by. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, in a minor way or a lighter way, it's like Baba used to say, I am not this body. So the same kind of a miniature version of that, actually. I am not, I am something else, and this is just my body. Jai Baba.
Yeah. Jai Baba, thank you. Thank you.
Observer witness, spot on, right? It's just a technique to strengthen your resolve on detachment. So, agreed totally. Yeah.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Yes.
Jai Baba, this is Kama.
Yeah,
Ashok, in a different form, when you're reading the prayers, the Parvardigar prayer, if you look deep into each one of the lines, Baba says, you are without beginning and without end. The word or phrase you are keeps getting repeated. I always used to wonder, why didn't he say I am? Because he's God. So when he is dictated this particular prayer, in my understanding, when he says you are, he's addressing to each one of us as Jivatmas. Because there is no difference between the Atma and Paramatma, except we define ourselves as the drop soul Shivatma in human form. I'm sorry, Jivatma.
Jiva.
To become Shivatma when we attain unity with God. So when your question about I am as infinite, so he is addressing you that you are infinite. So that is where the Parvadigar prayer makes a lot of sense, and I call it the Jnana Yoga prayer on the impersonal form or aspect of God. So when you look at God, there is duality. One is the personal form of God, which is based on each person's isms, Buddhism, Christianity, or whatever, the avatar. But when you look at the impersonal form of God, there is only one self, what you call as God. We can call it God particle or cosmic microwave background radiation or whatever. So to address the question yesterday probably about why Islam looks at the impersonal form of God is because there are many reasons. But one was probably, in my understanding, to make it simple, because Muhammad was dealing with tribes who were pagans, basically, So he wanted to make it simple for them that there is only one God, and because God is the formless, Nirguna Nirakar. So that is what I think probably Islam was addressing. But impersonal form of meditation is very difficult, because in the reading that we have done in the prior chapters, it clearly says that you have to go through the personal form of meditation, and most of us should stick to that. Only a few will migrate from personal form of meditation to impersonal form of meditation. Jai Baba.
Yeah, I think one small thing that I felt was, I think in the prayer that the you is to God. So though Baba has dictated it, as readers we are saying you to God, is what I took away from the Parvardigar prayer, right? So we are singing his praise, but it's reflective given the broader understanding of the truth as we evolve. But as the Jivatma saying the prayer, it is to that the oversoul that we are singing the praise, is what I took away. Right? But interesting observation that it could be reflective. It could be referring to myself.
You are looking at two different ways. One is you are saying you are addressing the Paramatma as as reciting the prayer. You are in the firmament and in the depths. But as a Jivatma, we are a subset of the Paramatma.
Exactly. That's what.
So you can look at it both ways. Correct.
So probably two sides of the same coin. I mean, the oversoul and the Paramatma and Atma. So two sides of the same coin.
Right. I think there is a message in everything and nothing which addresses this.
Oh, really? Okay, you should find it.
Yeah, I'll find out. Yeah,
share it on the group.
I just add.
Yeah, Nanda.
May I just add something here, Karthik?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
If you look in the table, there is something on the question and answer part. So to me beautifully in the past is that sometimes we keep asking a certain question to many people because we're trying to find a deeper answer. So what she explained to me is that a part of this is also connected to how about the heart, because at a deeper level, if no one is able to answer that, you're supposed to ask the universe the question or ask Baba this question, and then you have to wait for the answer. Okay, so unless we really meditate on it, if you study even neuroscience and psychology, it has been proven that sometimes you ask these questions and over a period of time you get the answers. So in a meditative space, it is more about asking Baba or asking the universe that question and waiting for the answer. So one has to really go in deep and meditate and the answer comes. And I've experienced Jai Baba.
Great.
You're cutting off. I couldn't hear completely what you were saying. You're cutting off the.
Yeah, okay. For some reason the audio was not great. But you want to try again, Ranga, or should I summarize?
To repeat it? Yeah, I can repeat it. So this is on the question answer part of the table. There is one of the impersonal forms of meditation.
Your audio continues to be bad.
I think the second part of the question this gentleman asked, the Ranga Iyengar-ji, was, no matter how much we read, we know theoretically that we are Paramatma, the God is in us. But until we realize that, we identify with our body and mind. That is why we say that you are Paramatma, you are on the Parvatgar prayer, you. That's one idea.
Yeah, so I think Ranga, if I can try to say what I understood when Ranga said it, given his audio is still not improved, he was saying that many of these things are about getting answers to deeper questions, and one of the ways also proven by science and neurosciences is by asking the question in meditation. And when you ask that question in meditation, you're asking the universe and you get an answer over a period of time. Sustained effort and dedication to that, to the seeking of that answer through meditation, through repeated asking in meditation, helps you get to the answer. Ranga, is that right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Cool. Your audio is better now. Okay. Anyway, so I will then continue with part 7. I'm still waiting for the place where Baba says, all this is fine, you don't have to meditate, but that maybe will come in the last chapter. On a lighter note, types of meditation, part 7, Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So, Nirvikalpa Samadhi is unique, is the subtitle. The different forms of meditation practiced before consciously entering the spiritual path, as well as the different forms of general and special meditation adopted after becoming an aspirant, are preparatory to the attainment of the Nirvikalpa state, the I am God state. Nirvikalpa Samadhi, or divinity in expression, is the experience of the Nirvikalpa state in which the aspirant becomes permanently established after realizing the ultimate goal of life. The Nirvikalpa Samadhi of the Siddha, or God-realized being, is continuous with all forms of meditation, is continuous with all the prior forms of meditation, and through the grace of a perfect master, it can be the culmination of them. However, it is unique and of an entirely different dimension. Pre-spiritual meditation of the worldly. The spontaneity of Nirvikalpa Samadhi must be carefully distinguished from the pseudo sense of spontaneity present in the usual meditations of the worldly person who has not yet entered the path. The mind of the worldly individual is engrossed in sense objects and he experiences no feeling of effort in meditating on these objects. His mind dwells upon them because of its natural interest in them and not because of any deliberate effort on his part. The sense of effort does not arise from allowing the mind to dwell upon these diverse worldly objects, but from trying to dissuade it from them. So, the pre-spiritual forms of meditation seem to have some similarity with the culminating Nirvikalpa Samadhi of the Siddha in having a sense of spontaneity. But this resemblance between the initial phase of meditation and its final phase is only superficial, since Nirvikalpa Samadhi and pre-spiritual meditations are divided from each other by vital differences of great spiritual importance. So he goes on, illusory spontaneity of pre-spiritual meditations. The sense of spontaneity experienced in pre-spiritual meditations concerned with worldly objects and pursuits is due to the interest created by samskaras. Pre-spiritual meditations are the working out of the momentum of accumulated samskaras of the past, and they are not only far from being the expression of true freedom, but are actually symptoms of spiritual bondage. At the pre-spiritual level, man is engulfed in unrelieved ignorance concerning the goal of infinite freedom. Though he is far from being happy and contented, he identifies so deeply with sanskaric interests that he experiences gratification in their furtherance. But the pleasure of his pursuits is conditional and transitory, and the spontaneity he experiences in them is illusory because throughout all his pursuits, his mind is working under limitations. True freedom and spontaneity exist only in Nirvikalpa. The mind is capable of genuine freedom and spontaneity of action only when it is completely free from sanskaric ties and interests, and this is possible only when the mind is merged in the state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi of the Siddha. It is therefore important to note that though there may seem to be a superficial resemblance between the Nirvikalpa Samadhi of the Siddha and the pre-spiritual meditations of the worldly, this resemblance really hides the important difference between illusory spontaneity and true spontaneity, bondage and freedom, fleeting pleasure and abiding happiness. In the pre-spiritual meditations, the movement of the mind is under unconscious compulsion, and in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, mental activity is released under conscious and unfettered initiative. The different forms of meditation that characterize the life of the spiritual aspirant stand midway between the pre-spiritual meditations of the worldly individual and the final Nirvikalpa Samadhi of the Siddha. They also constitute the link between them. When a person's primary acquiescence in sanskaric interests is profoundly disturbed by setback, defeat, and suffering, or is shaken by a spark of spiritual understanding, he becomes conscious of his bondage and the falseness of his perceptions. The title is Meditation, a part of aspirant's struggle towards emancipation. All the different forms of meditation that are then resorted to by the aspirant arise as parts of his struggle towards emancipation from the bondage of the deceptive desires of the worldly. The forms of meditation that are spiritually important begin when the person has become an aspirant or sadhak. Meditation involves effort. The meditation of the aspirant in all its forms is deliberate in the sense that it is experienced as counteracting instinctive or other tendencies inherent in the mind. The aspirant adopts different forms of meditation as means to an end. That is because he looks upon them as avenues to the truth. They are not working out of some given impulse, but are parts of an intelligent and deliberate effort. Although these forms of meditation may be deliberate to start with, the mind gradually becomes habituated to them. The mind is also interested in the various aspects of truth, which the different forms of meditation try to seize upon, and this increases spontaneity. In none of the meditations of a sadhak are the elements of spontaneity more pronounced than in those forms of personal meditation that gives scope for and require the expression of love. But utter spontaneity and true freedom remain unattained until the goal of meditation is achieved. Till then, there is usually a mixture of a sense of deliberateness and a sense of spontaneity. The reaching out towards spiritual freedom is accompanied throughout by a sense of effort which persists in some degree until all obstacles of false perceptions are overcome. Though effort may vary in its intensity, it never disappears until it is swallowed up in the tranquility of final attainment. Progression towards Nirvikalpa. In Nirvikalpa Samadhi, there is no effort because there are no obstacles to overcome or objectives to achieve. There is the infinite spontaneity of unfettered freedom and the unbroken peace and bliss of truth realization. Progression toward the Nirvikalpa state consists in a transition from a state of unquestioned acquiescence in the momentum of samskaras to a state of desperate struggle with the samskaric limitations, and finally to a state of complete freedom when consciousness is no longer determined by the deposits of the past, but is active in the undimmed perception of the eternal truth. Individual mind is annihilated in Nirvikalpa. The Nirvikalpa Samadhi of the Siddha is different from the meditation of the aspirant, not only with respect to freedom and spontaneity of consciousness, but also with respect to many other important points. All the different forms of meditation that the aspirant might be engaged in, directly or indirectly, aim at securing a complete merging of the mind in the infinite truth. However, they only partially succeed in this merging and fall short of the annihilation of the individual mind. They represent varying degrees of approximation to the spiritual goal, but not its realization. On the other hand, in the Nirvikalpa state, there is realization of the spiritual goal, since the limited mind is completely annihilated and has arrived at a total merging in the infinite truth. Temporary exaltation. The aspirant's meditation in its higher flights often brings a sense of expansion and freedom, as well as the joy and illumination of the higher planes. But none of these are abiding, because in most cases, when the aspirant comes down from his exalted state of meditation, he is again what he was, namely an ordinary person who is bound in the unyielding shackles of samskaric limitations. Story of a yogi. The incompleteness of the different samadhis of the aspirant may be illustrated by the story of a yogi from Gwalior, India, who was very greedy. Through yoga, he had mastered the art of going into samadhi. One day, he sat opposite the palace of the Raja and before going into samadhi, thought, I must have 1,000 rupees from the Raja. Then he went into samadhi and remained in that state for 7 full days. During this period, he took no food or drink, but only sat in one place, completely absorbed in trance meditation. People took him to be a saint, and when the Raja came to know about him, he also went to have his darshan. The Raja went near the yogi and happened to touch him on his back. That light touch was sufficient to bring him down from his samadhi, and as soon as he woke up from his trance meditation, he asked the Raja for 1,000 rupees. Analysis of trance meditation. Just as a prisoner who looks out of the window of his prison and gazes at the vast expanse of the sky may get lost in the vision of unlimited space, the aspirant who enters into trance meditation may temporarily forget all his limitations while immersed in its light and bliss. But though the prisoner may have forgotten the prison, he has not escaped from it. In the same way, the aspirant who is absorbed in trance meditation has lost sight of the chains that bind him to the world of illusion, but he has not really broken through them. Just as the prisoner again becomes conscious of his bondage as soon as he gazes at his immediate surroundings, the aspirant becomes conscious of all his failings as soon as he regains normal consciousness. The ascending forms of trance meditation may bring the aspirant increasing occult powers, but not that unending state of knowledge and bliss that is continuously accessible in Nirvikalpa Samadhi to the Siddha who has attained final emancipation by breaking through the chains of Maya. Nirvikalpa Samadhi is self-sustained. Another important difference is that in trance meditation, the aspirant is usually sustained by some object capable of exercising irresistible attraction. The lights, colors, smells, and sounds of the subtle sphere play a part in alluring the mind from the worldly things it may have been attached to. Thus, trance meditation is not self-sustained but is dependent upon the object to which the mind directs itself. The Nirvikalpa Samadhi of the Siddha is self-sustained and is in no way dependent upon any object of the mind. Trance meditation is more like the stupor of intoxicating drugs. The intoxication lasts only as long as the effect of the drug lasts. So the trance continues to exist as long as the mind is under the sway of the object it is sustained by. Nirvikalpa, which is free from the domination of the object, is a state of full wakefulness in which there is no ebb and flow, waxing or waning, but only the steadiness of true perception. The different forms of general and specialized meditation resorted to by the aspirant are useful and valuable within their own limits. They must not be regarded as having the same value for all or as being equally necessary to all. They are among the ways that lead the aspirant towards his divine destination. For the few who are in an advanced spiritual state, most of the ordinary forms of meditation are unnecessary. Those in Sahaj Samadhi as objects of meditation. For those who are in direct contact with the perfect master or the avatar, many of the special forms of meditation are often unnecessary. It is enough for them to be under the guidance of the master and to love him. And those rare beings who have attained self-realization and have become perfect masters themselves are always in the state of Sahaj Samadhi or divinity in action. They not only do not need any forms of meditation, but they themselves become objects of meditation for the aspirants. For they are then able to give their best help to those who meditated upon them. So I got my line. I think this ends part 7, but on a lighter note, I said I got the line I was looking for. So, but this is obviously about Nirvikalpa Samadhi, which is the culmination of all the forms of meditation and is at the pinnacle, which is the summary of spontaneity and freedom. So I think that's what this is. Any questions or comments, discussions? Let's take them up.
Jai Baba Karthik.
Yeah.
This is a comment from the previous part on that question and answer. I just want one word of caution that the right answer usually comes from the heart, not from the mind. You see, the mind is like a monkey. So when we ask a question, it starts feeding you some information. But if you wait a little bit and you're a little patient and get the right answer from the heart, and that takes a little effort. So I thought I forgot to add that. Just want to add that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jai Baba.
Thank you. That's interesting.
I think the whole chapter is very experiential,
Yes.
One has to start doing, because personally, if I try meditating, my mind starts working fast rather than at a normal speed. I get more thoughts than otherwise. So
you're like me, Sanjay. We have the last para. Last para hai na hamare liye.
So something experiential actually. So let's just start trying. That's Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Yeah, true.
There is one observation I want to make in the chapter in page 243. It says individual mind annihilated in Nirvikalpa. Now, if you have read God Speaks, and also we understand that Discourses was before 10 years before God Speaks. The annihilation of the individual mind happens in the first stage, Fana, Nirvana. So Nirvikalpa Samadhi is a second stage. Annihilation of the mind is already happened in the nirvana state, fana. The next state is nirvikalpa samadhi, which is fana phila. The differences in nirvana, as we know, is divine vacuum state and absolute bliss only. Whereas nirvikalpa samadhi is the Satchitananda, infinite knowledge, infinite power, infinite bliss. So just my observation, Jai Baba.
Okay, so any other thoughts? Mama, you've been unusually silent.
I am maybe in
Mama is
meditation
meditating.
are disturbed because of some technical issues at my end.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, it's okay. I was not able to concentrate because the screen was not visible. I had to go through with the book.
Oh, okay.
And the audio was not available early. Maybe internet issues. Later on,
Okay.
it said.
All right. Any other comments?
Karthik,
from
I
anybody
have
else?
just one observation. The
Please.
part which Kama mentioned, I think one part is very worth highlighting. That individual mind annihilated in Nirvikalpa. That paragraph, please. So in that part, this line, all the different forms, the second line, all the different forms of meditation that the aspirant might be engaged in directly or indirectly aim at securing a complete merging of the mind in the infinite truth. I think this part is pretty, worth highlighting. At least that's what I felt.
Sure.
So Karthik, on a lighter note, I think why Doc Mama didn't make any comments because you were so enthused by the last paragraph. So he doesn't want to clash with you in the Sahaja Samadhi or Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Okay. So he's wondering which Samadhi do you want to take? Like,
I'm just sticking to the last para. I'll follow that line. It is not necessary for those with perfect master. So having said that, we are almost out of time. So I'll just bring up one thought. Though the Maharathis of meditation on this call should guide the rest to do some group meditation maybe over the weekend. So any volunteers from the Maharathis of meditation? I know one in Singapore.
Yes, Nomita ji, yes.
I'm going to share a link so you guys can just follow that in your own time. I'll pick up a guided meditation.
We like guided meditation, guided by someone we know. You have to guide us.
But then if you tap my shoulder and ask me for 1,000 rupees, I'm not giving.
Okay. No, that we won't do.
Good
We won't.
no, they will ask Sunil.
1,000 SGD.
Oh my! I have to pay for Nomita's.
I'm no master, but okay. Let me see. Maybe I can try.
Maybe Sunday after the reading. Let's.
So if you guys reach the second stage, so everybody puts $1,000 on the table, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Now, since he's asking in dollars, I must also ask in dollars.
I'm sure I lost mine. You lost mine. Even before I start.
No, I'm going to make you give.
Okay.
You are my challenge.
Done. Let's do it. I am all game. No, because I this is something that's been eating been gnawing at my vitals, saying spirituality, and I've never done good meditation. So I really want to make a serious effort after crossing meditation.
When you call it serious, then it cannot happen. You have to ease into it.
Okay. Oh, good point.
Merge with it. So we will meditate on Baba's eyes.
Karthik,
yeah.
I feel you have a very good example at home. You are not able to learn from home itself.
I can't learn anything from her.
Garki Purgi is this,
Yeah, my wife is a expert meditator.
Oh, then she should guide us.
Yeah, I'll ask her if she wants.
You ask her.
Yes, I will.
Once she gets you there, then we'll take you somewhere else.
Then it's not $1,000. That cost is priceless, man. Chalo. Everybody
Good.
have a great day. Unless there are any more questions or comments.
But Karthik, I have one question.
Sure, Gama.
Why don't you feel that this reading is a form of meditation?
It is.
It is.
It is.
It
So
is.
you want to put a higher level?
No, I want to do from one of those types, from one of those 12 types, and say, yes, I was able to do it. And I came to the other end of the meditation with some of the objectives reached. And I'll make a genuine effort. $100 seriously on the table.
Okay. I have some money to make here.
But see, one difference about reading the book as a meditation versus sitting and doing a meditation is when you sit for meditation, you don't expect anything. You don't expect anything. You just want to dwell in the whatever the object here is, Baba, Belwad Baba. You look at the Baba picture and you keep repeating it. We are not expecting anything. That is the main thing. If we have subconscious expectation, we usually fail. That's one thing to remember before we sit for meditation.
Very good point. Yeah.
Very good point. Yeah. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
But I just wanted to repeat that probably just general reading for beginners is the part of general meditation. I think that is in one of the tables. So at least we have made some sort of a beginning. So that's what we can say to give some confidence and some sort of positivity into our efforts. That's all. Jai Baba. All of you have a nice day.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Have a
Jai
great
Baba.
day.
Jai
Avatar
Baba.
Meher Baba
Jai
ki
Baba.
jai. Thank you.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Nomita, I think she left.